Welcome, one and all, to the Stock Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for stocking up on the information you need to qualify for the Pro Tour. My name is Alex Midas. I am joined each and every week by my co-host, Jacob Negro, where we talk about everything related to competitive Magic and how you can qualify for the Pro Tour. If you'd like to support us, the best way to do so is over on patreon.com/stockuppodcast. At the moment, we have one tier that's $1 a month, and for that, you get access to all of our exclusive content. For all of our patrons who have supported us thus far, on behalf of Jacob and I would like to thank you very much. And if you'd like to follow us also over on YouTube, that would be much appreciated. Of course, you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thanks for listening, and please enjoy the rest of the podcast. Okay, Jacob, so how was your weekend?
Pretty good. Just been kind of focusing on Historic when I pay attention to Magic. Olivia and I started playing the old Pokemon games of Fire Red and Leaf Green kind of simultaneously.
Oh, nice. They came out on the Switch, right?
Yeah, and we had a Switch 1 and a Switch 2, so we've just been both playing, and we even traded. So we both got an early Alakazam to kind of
lucky
stole us the game, to be honest. But I've never had an Alakazam early in a Pokemon
Me
game.
neither.
So,
I always had Haunter, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, I can never have Gengar. But I remember Haunter was like really good against a couple of the gym leaders because they have Pokemon that just like can't damage it
yeah.
because of how Ghost Pokemon used to
Well,
work. Or still
Psychic
work.
type in that gem is really broken. It's not very
Yeah.
many weaknesses in the whole game.
So you just like one Alakazam just beats the whole game pretty much.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, there you go.
A
And
little
it's
less
funny because
interesting, but
those Pokemon games were like, I mean, the Pokemon games nowadays are so easy. I feel like they were harder before, but maybe honestly that's just because I was younger. Now I'm thinking
no,
about
they
it.
are. Having gone back to this one after playing more recent ones.
Like you have to grind more.
Yeah, and
To
I
make
just
it
caught
work.
like the legendary birds. We both did around the same time, and oh my god, like it'll just be literally 1 HP and asleep or paralyzed, and you still throw like 50 Ultra Balls at it, and it's like
Yeah,
there's
I do
no
remember
way
that.
that's like how it is in the current games.
That's how it
Like,
should be. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, it's got to be like in the current games. I feel like you just have like a 25% chance of catching whatever when it's in that state, and in this game, it's like no, you get like a 3% chance or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty rough. So, okay, we've got this historic qualifier weekend coming up this weekend, and boy, am I feeling like I should have started playing historic last month. There's
yeah,
so much
I
to
mean,
prepare for. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling better about it, but I gotta say, there's been some changes, that have happened in the last week, and people, at least on ladder, I feel like they kind of adjust to them a lot.
Okay,
Not changes in what's legal, but just kind of, I guess the notable change, and it'll be one of the first decks we talked about, is Canister put out a YouTube video of him playing Valakut, like just red green, scape shifts, Valakut. Now that deck's kind of all over the place, but what has happened because of it being all over the place is I'm noticing a lot more land hate, especially Magus and Harbinger of the Seas. I guess specifically out of the Jund deck, that's a deck that I don't think it's intuitive if you could even play Magus of the Moon. But I see it all the time in that deck now.
I mean, they've got a mana creature, and then they've got
Prismatic Vista.
Prismatic Vista.
It's not totally illegal. It's definitely like it works when it works. If you decide you're playing Jund and you want to sideboard Magus of the Moon instead of maybe Alpine Moon as an example, keep in mind that I would probably not use that card to try to like just mana screw a 3-color deck because
It might happen to you.
Yeah, it might happen to you. And it's a lot better when you're just like, I'm just gonna get my guys down versus a non-interactive ramp deck, and then like the turn before they could kill me, I'll just play Magus, and that's a lot more effective.
Turn off Valakut. Yeah.
Yeah.
For that reason, would you think Alpine Moon might just be better?
Yeah, it might be less vulnerable too.
Right.
They have Beseju, but usually that's just a one of. And then they might have some more dedicated disenchants like Force of Vigor, but don't really have a great reason to board that in against you. I suppose you have some enchantments like Exploration and Dryads, but still, those aren't the best enchantments to destroy with force either.
Hmm. Okay, so
Oh, sorry,
that's
the Jund deck doesn't have enchantments. What am I saying? I was mixing up what deck.
yeah. No, I
So
gotcha.
yeah,
Um,
so yeah,
what
you would.
what rank are you on Arena?
I am like Diamond now. Just been playing matches when I can, and then experimenting a lot, so I lose sometimes. Um, Plus, I've been cubing sometimes too. But
Mm. Yeah, I'm still not even diamond. So when I first started doing this, it felt like I was in the Wild West. And I mean, maybe that's just all the way through the ranks, but I was thinking it was probably because I was a lower rank.
I think it's just the Wild West. But
Okay.
it does sound like you play against more like completely non-meta decks than I do. I guess I definitely most decks I play against are something I've seen or played against before.
And I've stopped playing against them a little bit because today I grinded for like 4 hours with
Okay.
one of your decks, mono green, and I won a lot. So I'm like right before diamond now. Probably a
Yeah.
couple more match wins and I should get there. So that'll help a little bit. But like for instance, I was playing blue white control decks and I would play against like other decks that would I would be kind of the bully against because they were like slow control decks that weren't as controlling as me because I was playing Yorion. But the matches were just taking forever. So I was just like, I don't have time for this. The thing's this weekend. I got to figure out how to build
Yep.
my deck and all that. So
Yeah. There. Control in this format, I think, is going to be kind of hard to pull off because there's just a lot of different things going on. And on top of that, Valakut decks are kind of notoriously good against control. So you already have kind of a tough problem to answer, like right from the get go.
yeah, I am impressed with the variety of tools that Control has, and I actually assumed before I started playing that Control was maybe going to be underpowered, but I don't really think that anymore. I think they kind of have the tools for everything. But yeah, the guessing game is I'm not really wanting to gamble on, especially not how prepared I am now, and especially not for day one of the event.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
guess also, I'm trying to share what I know to help people in their play in or for day one of this event. I'm qualified for day two of this event, which does impact my choice a little bit, but more so what it means for me is ultimately I'm going to be, I think Nassif is going to be streaming this event, and probably more people will be too. I'm going to have all the like random streamers matches from day one to kind of review and see if I see anything interesting. I'm not going to try to attach too much to, what they like a metagame based on just what, their small sample is. But still, maybe I see a combo deck I didn't think of and I build my own version of it and ladder with it a little bit. That might happen before Sunday.
yeah, and I expect to learn kind of trial by fire. I'll probably learn more playing in the play-ins tomorrow, and hopefully, getting enough wins in day one for day two. If I do, I probably learn a lot more there, so maybe I can make a better decision for a day two tech then. But we'll see. Yeah, we could get into some of the decks, and obviously, like we're talking about Historic for this weekend, but I imagine this will be a good episode to listen to, even if you're not playing this weekend or you just want to know about Historic in general,
Yeah, I
because the
believe the.
format's not going to change too much too quick.
Hopefully not.
I don't think.
Yeah.
I guess
The
they could
next
release
arena
some new
championship
cards.
is historic, I've heard.
Okay,
So
so yeah, that's
our
kind of a big
content
deal.
and many other people's random content, I think, might end up getting surfaced by people competing in that tournament for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so maybe we'll start by talking about the boogeyman here, or what seems like the most popular deck, anyways, which is Jund Goyfs.
Yeah. So this deck, we've talked about it before. It features Bargoyf and Pyrogoyf. That's why it's called Jund Goyf, which are cube cards, interestingly enough. And then it's a Jund deck, so it's using, discard spells, Fatal Push. And then it has Jarsel, which is the alchemy only card. I'll read it again, even though we read it a lot. It's 1 red green for a 3/3 legendary creature, starting intensity 1. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may cast a spell with mana value equal to his intensity from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If you do, perpetually increase Jarsel's intensity by 1. So, at the beginning of combat, when you first play this, you'll cast a 1-drop, and if it lives another turn, you cast a 2-drop, then maybe even a 3-drop or a 4-drop. Usually, if you cast even just a 2-drop with this, you're very far ahead in the game. So you usually don't lose those games. For 1-drops, you'll usually always see 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Inquisition, 4 Fatal Push, and 4 Ignoble Hierarch. Sometimes even more. I know Abundant Harvest is a card I've seen a little bit of. It's kind of a hard card to play multiples of because it's clunky, but it's a single green for a sorcery. You choose land or non-land, and then you reveal cards from the top of your deck until you hit that type. So just a little cantrip that, you know, gives you something else to do with Jarsoul. It's just kind of like a hard card to deal with because there's no lightning bolts in this format, and you're a discard spell deck. So what ends up happening is you get Thoughtseized once, and then they play this, and then you get Thoughtseized again. So it's kind of hard for you to even have an answer to this a lot of the time. And then it's also a Malevolent Rumble deck, which fuels kind of Jarsoul. It's also a 2-drop, and it's also, you know, just makes a lot of types in your graveyard for your Tarmogoyfs really fast. And then beyond that, the rest is all kind of flex, I'd say. You know, you see Abrupt Decay, Witherbloom Command. You'll usually see some good things to mill over because they have the Rumbles. So you'll see like a Kroxa or Detective's Phoenix, which Detective's Phoenix can, you know, really suddenly turn the corner, especially if you play Pyrogoyf and hit in the same turn. That can just be like a sudden 12 damage or something out of nowhere pretty easily. The Fables and Cruciuses are kind of flex spots I've seen as well. I've seen Grist every now and then. Nassif has been playing this deck, and he really likes Esper Origins, which it's kind of looked pretty impressive to me. He plays 1 or 2 sometimes. If you hit that card with Jarsoul, it'll come back just as a 4/4, so that's pretty cool. But also it's a good card to mill over, and also even, you know, helps mill you, which just fuels your deck anyways.
Yeah, helps you, helps you going up the chain for Jarsoul. Decent to discard with Fable or Crucius. Like you said with the Jarsoul, I just kind of want to hit on that point. It's interestingly hard to interact with in this format because, again, Red's removal is kind of like Unholy Heat is nerfed, Discharge is nerfed, Lightning Bolt's not legal, so they really don't have good red removal.
Yep.
Black, you know, the best thing you can play is Fatal Push, but you don't have fetch land, so it's hard to Fatal Push. White, all their instant speed removal is like a bunch of drawback cards, like you can play Get Lost or Path, things like that. You can play March, but that's either going to cost more, or you're going to have to pitch cards from your hand. Blue does have Counterspell, which is pretty nice, but between them having, maybe they have a hierarch and they're on the play, or maybe they have one of their 6 discard spells, they take your 1 answer, then play it, then all of a sudden you're going to discard it again. Then on the next turn, if they had done Rumble on turn 2, they get the Rumble, fill in their graveyard, and then they get a 3-drop. It can really spiral out of control.
Yeah, also like a play pattern I've recognized now is if they untap with it and have the Rumble, they get to like play the Rumble and flashback the Rumble, and it's like the Rumble was free because they have 2 spawns that turn for their post-combat.
I lost to someone who had Fear of Missing Out. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
If they get to do the Fear of Missing Out thing, then they get to up the intensity on Jarsoul twice and cast 2 spells.
Yeah, I think that also sees play because it's an enchantment creature.
Right.
So, you know, a little helpful. I've seen Tarmogoyf in this deck too. You know, it's going to be large. I think maybe an issue with some of the other threats in this deck you could play is them being kind of bad against graveyard hate, and, you know, people are already kind of in the market of Relic Regenitus and Rest in Peace against your Tarmogoyfs and Jarsoul. So you have to be kind of careful with that.
Yeah, Rest in Peace can be a nightmare, even if they like peel it late, because it makes so much of your creatures just tiny.
Yeah. But, you know, things like Fable and Crucius as alternative threats kind of can fix some of these problems against graveyard hate, so that's nice. Crucius is a weird alchemy card. He's a 3-mana 3/1, red, black, and 1. And beginning of your end step, I don't know the words, but you basically pick greater than or less than, and you discard a card in your hands, make a treasure, and then search for something with mana value higher. Not search, but seek something with mana value either greater than or less than what you discarded. Notably, it can hit lands, so if you pick less than, there's a decent chance you're just going to draw lands, which maybe you want. But I think usually what happens is you convert, you know, things like discard spells into things that are greater than it. So you get kind of more action out of your cards, or discard lands into things that are greater than it. In addition to that, making a treasure is pretty sweet, honestly, the turn you play it, because of Fatal Push being a large part of this deck. That aspect of it's really nice.
Yeah. Crucius is actually a nerfed card. Yep. I remember when it was a 3/3.
Yeah, so a pretty minor nerf, but not totally irrelevant.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. You know, literally, this might be kind of crazy, but literally until yesterday, I didn't realize Pyrogoyf not only triggered as an FTK, but also whenever you play another Goyf.
Yep, that's part of the appeal of maybe putting Tarmogoyf in this deck. Also, the thing you played is what does damage equal to its power. So when you play Barrogoyf, it has Death Touch and lifelink damage.
Yikes. Yeah, I had a game where I was literally at like 13 or something, and they in
Yeah.
one turn played 2, and I couldn't understand why I was dead, and then I had to read the Pyrogoyf.
Yeah, and then things like 1 Arena of Glory and that 1 to Texas Phoenix are pretty normal in this deck, so the haste thing is pretty real. I played with this deck a little bit. I kind of have some issues. It's also a Giganta deck, notably, and it's a pretty good Giganta deck. I think discard spell decks, you kind of do the Jundi thing where both players could run out of cards really fast some games, so you having this kind of 5/5 always reliably is pretty nice. That's definitely a big deal. Sideboard cards like Culling Rituals, they're pretty normal sweeper of choice. And then, I'd mentioned earlier, you probably want either Alpine Moon or Magus to the Moon in your sideboard right now for Valakut. Those are also incidentally good against Lotus Field, which is... I see both Lotus Field Combo and Lotus Field Control. They're not the most popular decks, but they are just like an angle of attack people use in this format.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if someone cracked the code on a Lotus Field combo deck. That deck was always pretty popular in Pioneer.
I mean, I guess what I'll say is I've played a Lotus Field combo deck in a historic weekend around a year ago, and it's not very... The current lists are not much better than that list was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And right now, they've unbanned the Maguses and Force Negation recently, and those are just seeing a lot of play, which all seem problematic for that deck.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, so you think this deck's pretty strong, definitely with a Boogeyman. Obviously, we talked about it last time also, but like another really popular deck is the Dimir Frog deck. Have you developed any more thoughts about this deck?
I think the Dimir Frog deck might have some good kind of leveling going on against some of the other things in the format, but I think playing with Tamiyo and Psychic Frog is kind of rough into the Dimir Goyf deck. Or, sorry, the Jund Goyf deck.
Okay, that's interesting. So you don't like the head-to-head.
Yeah, I just think you're a little smaller than them, and they just end up having more removal than you because of, like the Jarsel Fatal Push thing is brutal, right? Like, if they push one of your guys and then later in the game they Jarsel Push, even if it's a Baleful Strix that they hit with Jarsel Push, like, they're happy with that, And then things, also notably, Malevolent Rumble helps Fatal Push's case a little bit too for them. They can revolt their push a little better than you can. So, they stack up these really large Goyfs that can be hard for you to deal with. I think when both players are playing discard spells, it's kind of hard for Psychic Frog to, like, get to 5 toughness, which is what you might need to, like, survive Pyrogoyf too. So, like, that's just going to be a removal spell often against your deck. Even Baleful Strix is, like... Baleful Strix is, like, better against Tamiyo and Frog than it is against the Jund deck, I'd say, because, like, Jarsel could just sit there and play and get value if they want, and Pyrogoyf can come down and just, like, snipe the Strix. It's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, I was playing less. I ended up cutting a Wandering Emperor from one of my blue-white decks because I had 3, because Wandering Emperor is a pretty strong card, but one of the reasons is because not that strong against Jund, because, their creatures never even have to tap to do anything. This is something I learned a long time ago where and it seems to hold true today, where when you have 2 mid-range decks against each other where neither of them is doing anything like particularly broken, usually just like the slightly bigger, aka slightly better late game deck has a pretty strong advantage.
Yep.
And it definitely seems like the Jund deck has more grindy elements. I mean, they just have more expensive cards.
Yeah, exactly. And comically, a deck I've found a lot of success with against Jund is my Grixis Luris deck with the Chorus cards, which is kind of doing the same thing to Jund that Jund is doing to this kind of stock blue-black deck, where I've cut Tamiyo and Frog, and I'm just playing kind of a pure control deck with Snapcaster and Baleful Strix, but, and a sweeper, notably.
Yeah, totally. Would you, like, if you're playing this list and you had Harbingers in your cyber, would you try to get the Jund players? Would you board those in?
I think you should board those in. Yeah, so maybe Luris is the wrong direction for this type of deck.
Yeah.
Again, because of the Jund deck, weirdly. Another reason, too, is, honestly, the more expensive threats are kind of useful. Quantum Riddler is probably quite good in that matchup, so that's probably a big deal. The other card that's good from the Jund side against this deck when I was playing Lurrus is Culling Ritual. I just think they'll board them in, especially if you have Lurrus revealed. Yeah, I mean, Quantum Riddler is going to be like quite impactful. I do think Lurrus, if you're playing like blue black mirrors, is really good, much better than pretty much all these other things.
Okay. Yeah, that might be a reason enough. Like if you're definitely going to play this deck, maybe have some Riddlers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Go with the more expensive stuff. I mean, Psychic Frog and Tommy are super strong cards, so you're kind of, I imagine you're decent into a lot of the field. Like maybe you do pretty well against Valakut, that sort of thing.
Yeah, against the normal red green Valakut deck, I think that could be true, and I'm not sure they have things to adjust to it. I will say, especially without Riddler, I've noticed Psychic Frog is not like the fastest card in the world. They can't just like go all in with their hand, and and Tamiyo obviously does no damage. So like, I guess I would say this blue black deck is not that fast. Is maybe its downfall versus the combo decks.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you don't really have that many threats that stick that matter. It's basically just Frog.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get to my deck later, but I've built a Teamer Scapeshift deck, and like, you'd think maybe that's a bad matchup, but like they can't beat Mistrise Village Scapeshift as an example.
Yeah,
it's just like a thing that beats them every time, and because their deck's not that fast, and they're kind of relying on the counter magic working. And to be clear, like I understand they have Sink into Stupor, but I just think their deck is like actually that kind of slow that like you could just Mistrise. Like if your opponent's leaving up 3 mana, first of all, you might do something else, but second of all, like you could just Mistrise Scapeshift and like not be dead and just keep presenting it.
Could we get some like Nethergoyfs or something in here, you think?
Maybe. I like Barrowglyph is like pretty fast, and I like the life gain. That's another reason to not be Lurrus. Also, Barrowglyph never dies to Pyroglyph. They always, it'll always have one more toughness than what Pyroglyph's damage is, and it wins in the head-to-head. So it's kind of just like a pretty good card.
Okay. Even though it's 3 mana, you think you can get that down against those type of decks, Valakut or whatever?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think Nethergoyf attacks for enough.
All right.
Especially without Mishra's Bauble.
Sure. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. Whenever I play against this deck, I mean, it's really popular. It's maybe even more popular than Jund, at least where I am on the ladder.
Yeah, but I guess to go back, this deck might be really good into red-green Valakut. The Harbingers are going to be better because they don't have things to do with the blue mana, whereas the Teamer deck I'm talking about just has like Cryptics and Auto Aura to answer the Harbinger and also counter spells.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you could engineer your deck such that it'd be decent.
Yeah.
Especially after sideboard.
But yeah, I guess this is a deck I have not seen as much of compared to how it looks like on Untapped, where it seems like it's the second most played deck. And obviously I just have, my own kind of small sample relative to everything else. But my experiences against Jund with this deck are why it makes sense to me that this deck should be kind of trending down.
Okay. I get it. All right. Well, let's go on to some of these other decks. I mean, we talked about these decks already. So we've brought it up several times. Might as well talk about Red-Green Valakut, how it looks in this format.
Yeah, so Canister put out that YouTube video playing it, and his main deck is exactly what I have here, if you know that. But basically, I'll just go over some of the cards. You have Exploration and Kami of Bamboo Groves. Kami is that Arboreal Grazer type card, but you can channel it for 2 forests in your hand. It has Farseek. Notably, Farseek nowadays can get Surveil lands. This deck does have 4 Commercial Districts, so it comes tacked on with a Surveil land. He also has 1 copy of Gate Tumbledown, which is a mountain gate. It enters tapped, taps for red, and you can pay 3 in a red and tap it to seek a non-land card. So it's kind of like the Echoing Caverns card, but it's pretty often just going to, in this deck, get a ramp spell. It's honestly not the strongest thing, which is why I think you don't play more, but the option is nice for Farseek or even a non-lethal Scapeshift or something. It has the Song of Seasons card, which is really powerful. This is 1 red and a green for a sorcery. You seek a mountain, a forest, and a non-mountain, non-forest land card, and then you put 1 on the battlefield and 1 of them in your graveyard. So that card almost doesn't make sense when you read it, but to be clear, Seek implies that they're going to your hand. So it puts 3 lands in your hand. You pick 1 to put in the play and 1 to put in your graveyard. The other one will stay in your hand. So it's like a Cultivate, but it doesn't have the word tapped on it at all. So, if you put a basic forest into play or whatever with it, then that'll be untapped. And it kind of entombs a land for you, which is useful because this is also an Ice-Tail Explorer deck. It also just makes it more likely that maybe you end up with the one of Beseju in your hand or something like that. So that's pretty powerful. And then it has Ice Tails, like I said, the One Ring, Scape Shift, and a couple Primeval Titans. The Primeval Titans I kind of liked. You don't have to play them, you know. I'm sure some people maybe just cut the 2 Primeval Titans for the 4th Dryad and the 4th Ice Tail. The One Ring is nerfed. It costs an extra mana. I've been a big fan of it in these exploration decks specifically because you kind of have the extra mana to use it, and it just plays well with exploration to draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, super powerful card, right? And I mean, obviously they made it more mana, but if your deck makes a lot of mana anyways, it's still worth it for sure.
Yeah, I'll say
You just get into the spots where you're just, you know, you're looping them, and it does a lot against a lot of different decks. Gives you protection against Thoughtseize when you play it, all sorts of things.
yeah, it gives you protection against Scape Shift too. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting in mirrors. You know, it's kind of, I think, good to have in mirrors. In fact, gives you protection from like Emrakul as well. So it's a card that can really just. Not many decks in the format will punish you for playing it. Really, Scape Shift. You know, a while ago when Wish came out, I remember thinking you could just play like Wish instead of Scape Shift, and then Wish for Scape Shift when you have 7 mana. And playing this deck and realizing that's just like not true. You cast Scape Shift, you know, without 7 mana available all the time. Your deck's a lot faster when you just play actual Scape Shift, I guess is my point, because you might just, you know, go to a turn where you play your 6 land, play a Farseek, and play Scape Shift.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And sometimes your opponent pays life for some reason, or if you have Dryad out, that makes it faster too.
Yeah, and then also, you know, it's cheaper to just spend 4 on it. You might play a Dryad, and your opponent sees you have like 2 Valakuts in play, and they're like, I have to counter this Dryad. It's just going to 18 me, and then you just play Scape Shift, and you got to play 2 spells in the same turn.
So this deck, what does it do to the format exactly? Because is this sort of the litmus test combo deck? Like, is this like the turn 4?
So it's
thing you
faster in
have
this
to be able to
format
beat?
than it is in Modern. I do think it's still kind of a turn 4 deck, but Exploration, when you build your deck around it, which I think this deck qualifies as, is, I don't know, one of the most powerful things you can do in the format. I think build your deck around it involves, you know, lots of lands. This deck has 28. It usually involves the One Ring. I think it always involves Ice-Tail Explorer, because if you assemble that combination with Prismatic Vista, or this deck even has Fabled Passage, then you'll have an endless supply of lands, which is a big deal. But, you know, when you play Exploration on turn 1, you can play Ice-Tail on turn 2, and that's just like a 1-2 punch that it theoretically could win on turn 3. You know, you could just have 7 lands on turn 3 with that start. 8, in fact, I think.
Yeah, that is pretty insane. It doesn't always happen because you don't always have like, you have to have all 4 lands in your hand. This
Yeah.
deck doesn't have any bounce lands, which your other green exploration deck does, and those
Yep.
definitely help a lot.
Definitely. It's a big deal. The Song of Seasons card helps a lot with Exploration, I'll say. But besides
That's
that,
fair.
I agree.
It's
And then, you know,
it's
the Kami helps too, right? That's why, even though Grazer is a much better blocker than the Kami, any game you have turn 1 Exploration, you're not playing the Kami really. You know, you're channeling it and getting 2 forests, unless you're like lethaling with it with Valakut Dryad stuff on like the last turn of the game.
Yeah, and honestly, that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't played this exact deck, but I've played a similar deck.
Yeah, and
So
in this more Valakut Dryad focused build, the playing it for an extra land drop is a big deal, but also I'd say I feel like half the time the Kami's in my hand, I end up channeling it. You know, it's kind of evenly like a true split card.
So ramp decks like this can always sort of just lose to themselves. They draw their payoffs. They don't draw enough ramp. That could be trouble. If they draw all ramp, no payoffs, that could be trouble. This deck has a nice mix of things, but you know, I imagine it could still get picked apart by thought seizes, counter spells, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it
Does
kind of
it-
does the classic thing where Thought seizes at least, where you're going to have to top deck something. You know?
Yeah, especially you're not killing their Jersel.
Yeah, you probably can get your 7-8 lands into play for Escape Shift to be lethal, and you have things like Titan, Run Ring, and Escape Shift to get you out of those spots, but the rest of your deck doesn't really get you out of those spots. It has a high mountain count with 4 Valakuts naturally, So some games, I think, that pressure of just Valakut and playing lands can be potent. I don't think Jund Goyf is one of those matchups, though. I think, you are beating them off the power of top decking good things. The Surveillance help a little bit with that, too, of course. Especially because Farseek and Song of Seasons are like really likely to find Commercial District. But yeah, I think what I was saying about that is like I've played some true control decks, and I think in those matchups, the control deck might struggle with you just playing mountains and dealing damage to them, and maybe picking off Snapcaster Mage or whatever if that's their only pressure.
Oh yeah, for
Or
sure.
even Planeswalkers. But the Jund Goyf deck, playing like a high toughness, life linking Borrow Goyf, I don't think your Valakuts are gonna really get there by themselves.
Yeah, they definitely have more of a clock. Yeah, if your control deck isn't built with Valakut in mind, which I would build your decks with them in mind now,
Yep.
whether that means playing, maybe you have to play Field of Ruin, or maybe you have to have some other sideboard strategy. You can't play Spreading Seas. Funny enough, that card's banned. I learned today,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But yeah, if you just have like very few win conditions, some fragile stuff that works against everyone else, you'll just die to their mana because you can't counter their lands and whatnot. And you're not
Yeah,
gonna
and
be able
that
to
makes
counter when they
things
play.
like an uncontested Ice-Tail Explorer might just totally solo you, for an example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas versus Jund Goyfs, I think, or in some other matchups, Ice-Tail Explorer does not really get the job done by itself in this deck, which when we get to my other deck, I think it's more true that Ice-Tail Explorer is really threatening in the mono green deck I've made.
Yeah. My guess, just looking at this deck, like I said, I'm not particularly super experienced in this format, and for that reason, I'm not really going to be making any recommendations of what people should play. But my guess is this deck probably does well against Jund, although not that well.
That's
And
my
then
guess as well.
It's probably a little behind against Blue Black, but not too behind. And overall, it would probably be a pretty good day one choice.
Yep, I agree. It's pretty straightforward. Just some things to watch out for. I've added Beast Within to my sideboard. In fact, I asked around for cards that could kill Elish Norn, which is a card that the current list cannot beat in any manner whatsoever if they play no outs to it. So Beast Within is something I came up with that I thought you could just board in versus the types of decks you thought might have Elish Norn. It might not be that bad. You have a lot of passes on ignoring the beasts by having a bunch of 2/4s and Valakut in your deck.
Yeah, you do.
Not that I don't know if I'd really recommend just like turn 2 stone raining your opponent's land with Beast Within in this type of deck. That I think might not actually be the type of play you want to make. Maybe in the mirror, maybe you can do that in the mirror, but I think being like an answer, kind of a catch-all thing, because it's also going to be able to just hit like a Magus or an Alpine Moon. So I kind of like that it's just a pure kind of catch-all, and I think you might be able to get away with beating the 3/3 beast.
Yeah, or any kind of like Planeswalker they might stick, something like that.
Yeah, and similarly, I put in Ugin. I have the Storms on my sideboard, which I've appreciated out of the sideboard of my mono green deck, which because it's also just kind of a catch-all, even though it's expensive.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, deck's sweet. Deck's relatively simple to play. You have to figure out the lines. You have to understand how Valakut works exactly. Make sure to study all that, but
yeah, and I guess I'll add, like, I'd mentioned you had to build your deck around exploration, and I think, it's just like, I don't think exploration and Scapeshift are naturally friends. Scapeshift is a really resource-intensive card, and exploration puts you down a resource. But it's like the combination of exploration with Ice-Tail Explorer then gets you back all the resources you've lost from exploration, basically. So that kind of fixes it.
Yeah, or like Titan, right? Might be tempted to play 4 Explorer, but
yeah, I agree. I think the 4th Ice-Tail Explorer might be more important than the 4th Dryad, but I did play a lot with 4 Dryad, 4 Ice-Tail, 0 Titan, and kind of felt like I was missing that kind of like top deck win the game power type of card.
yeah, Titan's real nice.
Yeah, a card too that you could play with Primeval Titan maybe is Arena of Glory. Does cost you like a mountain slot maybe, but it is pretty powerful, and even just one copy you'd see a lot with Ice-Tail and Song of Seasons.
Right. Non-mountain, non-forest cards. So your Song of Seasons, we'll see that sometime. Okay.
Yeah, you don't get to pick what you seek, but these random one-ofs like Beseju are more likely to enter your game.
Right, because some of your
Um,
lands are mountains and forests.
yeah, and then yeah, I guess lastly, I did try Greenstone Zenith in this deck, and I was not impressed. It's just too bad to spend one extra mana on any card in your deck, basically.
Sure.
None of
Did
your
you have is Dryad Arbor?
no, Dried Arbor is not legal, so that's a big part of why it's not great.
Sure. Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, pretty simply put, I think people have learned this in Modern since they've unbanned Greenstone Zenith, but cards are a lot worse when they cost one more mana, and the flexibility of Zenith is not necessarily worth making a card that's basically any card in your deck but for one more mana.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can move on to some other decks. We will come back to some of these land decks when we talk about some of the decks that Jacob and I have actually had more experience playing than this.
Yep.
But for now, we're just going to touch on, some of the more popular decks and maybe some of the decks you all have built or whatnot already. So let's move on to Affinity. This has got to be one of the other really popular decks.
Yeah, so they're kind of abusing the Drix Interlacer card, which we had mentioned last week is the 1-mana artifact with starting intensity 0. Whenever an artifact enters under your control, it gains intensity, and at sorcery speed, you can tap and sack it to draw cards equal to half its intensity rounded down. The intensity stays, so if you bring this card back with like Emery, it'll remember how big it was. My list is a little different than other lists. I don't mean to I don't have strong feelings about this, but other lists play Krang. Krang is not that good in my mind. I definitely would not play Krang. Other lists have Sink in the Superman and Force Negation in the sideboard. Those might be worth it, but what they cost you compared to my list is Giganta. And this is a kind of mana-intensive deck, and I think Giganta might be actually kind of good against some decks, but maybe it's not worth it. This deck is naturally going to play a lot of Tormod's Crypts, which is kind of cool, but just because it's a 0-mana artifact, and I think, the Springleaf Drum and Ornithopter thing is totally fine, and this angle of Weapons Manufacturing Arcbound Ravager maybe looks kind of silly, but I think when you play the Thoughtcast Emery Drix type stuff, you end up drawing a lot of your deck, and I like this kind of inevitable, and specifically as someone playing a lot of the One Ring, I've really struggled with the Weapons Manufacturing Ravager combination, just giving them something to play towards to beat me, just on my upkeep.
Yeah, to me, that's one of the most powerful synergies they have going right now.
Yeah, it's just I've seen the Seif not liking it that much, but I'm not sure he's tried it that much. And I guess what my thoughts are is if you compare it to Modern Affinity, you might think that an untutorable 4 of Arcbound Ravager is not good enough to make the weapons manufacturing thing good, and the manufacturing just giving you random artifacts. I mean, it does power up the Drix and it makes Kappa Cannoneer easier to play. So it's not like making random token artifacts is even that bad, but what actually ends up happening is this deck in my mind is not that fast. It's just really good at drawing cards. So because it's really good at drawing cards, I kind of like that it can then close the game after drawing a lot of cards by just playing a Ravager and shooting you for 10.
Yeah,
or more.
I mean the Drix draws a lot of cards. Don't the modern decks play weapons manufacturing?
Yeah, they
nowadays?
do, but they play a bunch of Claws of Gix and engineered explosives, and they can get the claws. Right. It's funny, they used to start with one Claws of Gix back at Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, and then people realized, it's a 0-mana artifact and it's good in your deck, so people are playing 3 or 4 now. And they're just it's not that bad. The floor is a 0-mana artifact, so why don't we just play more?
Plus you have the Saga. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much to say about this deck. It has some really explosive starts that make you feel like it's super powerful, but then also, it just has the same problem where there are a lot of good artifact hate cards that people can play in their sideboard in this format.
There's Meltdown and Shatterstorm, Force of Vigor. This deck is just a lot lower in my mind recently because of those cards. Sometimes you definitely get out the gates fast. You hold up Rebuke or Force of Negation, or there's this card Machinist Dismissal that's pretty cool. Is it even? I don't even know if this card's alchemy only. I don't know why it would be. It's 4 and a blue for negate, but costs 1 less. It's like affinity for artifacts negate.
I feel like I've never seen it before, so makes me think it's alchemy.
Oh, because it counts artifacts in your hand. That's why. So it's 4 and a blue instant affinity for artifacts in play and in your hand, and it's negate. So that's part of why I thought I could get away without Force Negation, is because this card just exists and works through the Giganta anyways.
Makes sense.
But like I said, I think people are coming really prepared for you, and the difference for coming prepared for this deck compared to the Scapeshift deck is they destroy all your artifacts and you kind of never recover, and the other deck your opponent like puts a permanent into play that you have to kill before you can win. So it's like a big difference.
Yeah, it's like counterplay versus not much counterplay.
Yeah, and you have artifact lands in this deck too, so when they destroy all your artifacts, it's extra brutal.
Yeah, it could be really brutal, and the white decks have some good options too against you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know about this one. It's really going to depend on what you think if people are prepared, and it feels like they kind of are. So I don't know if I'd go with this one.
It's just a little easy to be prepared for it in my mind because people aren't really going to adjust too fast to maybe believing this deck is dead. Maybe that's something I should keep in mind for day 2 of my qualifier weekend. Maybe I should just believe it's really unlikely I'm going to play against Affinity. So if you make day 2, maybe keep that in mind. That might not be true though, but that's kind of where I currently stand.
Yeah, maybe day 2 you could free up some of your sideboard slots, although it is a dance, right? Then maybe everyone else thinks that and someone brings us and it does well.
Yeah,
so who knows?
I'll say this deck is quite good, like with ignoring the sideboard cards. I've lost to it before I started playing more of these sideboard cards.
Yeah, totally. I've been seeing an uptick in like green decks that play Karn too. That's another problem. I would say, like if they ramp into a Karn really fast.
Yeah, if you don't get your creatures down, and the exploration decks or the Bugin's Lab decks can definitely turn to Karn you. So.
Totally. Okay. There's another really really linear deck that's been pretty popular. This Boros Auras deck with Lurrus.
Yeah.
What do you think of this deck?
Yeah, I played against a lot. I don't really know why this list has Doorkeeper Thrall, but I'll ignore that for now. Usually you see Esper Sentinel, Light Paws, Core Spirit Dancer. I always see those. Bunch of auras, Ethereal Armor, and Sheltered by Ghost for interaction. Demonic Ruckus is kind of cool with Light Paws. That's kind of a cool, interaction. They have access to this alchemy card back from Edge of Eternities that's kind of mind-blowing called Thought Partition. It's white for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose one of the cards. I guess they only reveal the non-land cards. And then that card's mana cost perpetually just becomes 5 generic mana.
Interesting.
So
Interesting card.
Kind of a Thoughtseize. It works really effectively against random things. It also becomes white. So I guess there's an Aquatic Subtlety combo deck which gives the blue creature cards in their hand evoke. So that would kind of work, though they might discard the thing and reanimate it. But some of those decks have moved away from Reanimator. But yeah, I guess Doorkeeper Thrall maybe is serving some purpose. I've seen this deck with Mother of Ruins. I've seen the occasional SRAM. I don't think SRAM is powerful enough to play multiple copies of, being legendary.
What is the Thrall shut off exactly? It's things
ETBs
entering
from
the
artifacts
ability?
and creatures, so not Valakut.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure. I mean, it is the Wild West out there. Maybe this person was running into things that the Thrall is good against.
I pretty much beat this deck with all the decks I play, but I think, especially looking at this deck now, it's not actually that fast. I don't think this deck kills you on turn 3. So the fact that there are decks that do something super overwhelmingly powerful on turn 3, the exploration decks, or just kill you on turn 4 and they could just be on the play. And those are the non-interactive decks that I feel like you're kind of hoping to play against. It's a little weird to me.
Yeah. I thought this deck was maybe it's when I was first playing, I played against it and I was I didn't know it was a meta deck, so to speak. Until I started running into a lot. And, I was playing control decks, and the answers in blue-white control line up pretty well against this deck, so I wasn't really losing to it. I did lose some games with some of the less interactive decks I played. They can, if they get down, especially Spirit Dancer or Light Paws on turn 2, they could make it pretty big on turn 3. They mostly aren't killing you until turn 4, really, but they have a couple ways to protect their creatures. They have a little bit of disruption with our Thought Partition and Shelter by Ghost. Maybe they trick you into slowing down with Esper Sentinel, essentially. So
yeah,
they can
Esper Sentinel is
grind
a really
pretty well
powerful
with
card in
Lurrus.
this format. I'll say that card's really impressive every time I play against it.
Yeah, that card's always been really good, I will say. It's a very nice
there's
card.
not really the 1 toughness punishers in this format for it that exist in Modern nowadays either.
Yeah. Oh, there is Ren and 6, isn't there?
Yeah, but there's only Prismatic Vista. That's the big flaw.
Hmm. Sure. Is there the cycling lands for one
There's
mana?
Ash Barrens and oh, you mean like Lonely Sandbar?
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Here, let me look up Forgotten Cave because it's on color.
Sure.
It is legal and historic.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's interesting. It seems like the kind of card that would fit into Valakut, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, adding the cycling lands is not great. Also, I mean, Ice Tail Explorer is like a
Just
really
better.
fast thing, and Ren is kind
Yeah.
of just like a weird, slow, grindy card. Also, Planeswalkers are not very good with the One Ring.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's probably enough things going against it. I guess there's not that many one toughness creatures running around either. I mean, there's a few, but
Yeah, not
okay.
really.
Yeah. All right. So, what's your gut verdict on this red white deck?
I would avoid it. I don't really see why you'd play it. I've faced and seen a hammer list, and I respect the idea of that deck way more. I don't know how much I want to delve into it, but a lot of stuff is good with Colossus Hammer in this format, I guess is what I'd say.
Hmm. Okay.
And you can play Sigardizade, Inkmoth, Stoneforge. There's no Urza Saga. You can play Cloud if you want more hammer redundancy. There's Esper Sentinel. There's a weird Final Fantasy card called Yuffie that equips a hammer, and there's an Alchemy 1-drop that's like Savannah Lions, but when it enters, you pick an equipment in your hand or in play, and it perpetually gains equip for 1.
Hmm. Pretty
And if you
interesting.
want, you could even play Leyline X. This would cost you Luris, but it might be worth it.
Sure.
And just put the Leyline X into play turn 1 and play your Savannah Lions that turns its equip cost to 1, and that's even kind of threatening in itself.
Yeah. That sounds kind of worth it. I maybe if you're a brewer, that's something you could work on for the future of this
Yeah.
format.
And
Because
I
this
guess
format
what
is pretty wide open.
Yeah, and like as someone that's played a lot of Hammer in Modern before, I'll just say that like even though it looks kind of all in, it's less all in than you think because like when you do the thing, your opponent is either dead or one turn from dead. So it's just like it's much more effective and like your ability to I guess rebuild weirdly is really effective because sometimes they just go kill your guy, kill your guy, kill your guy. But then on turn 4 you're like I have an 11/11 Esper Sentinel and that works. Like and it's not actually that hard on turn 4 to say actually I have an 11/11.
Sure. I mean, that's the beauty of equipment as it was intended, right?
Exactly
Like you
compared
have
to
to kill
auras.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Another really popular deck, which maybe less popular now. I don't know. I don't seem to lose to it with many decks, but uh, I've got the blue red wizard deck. Um,
Yeah.
Prowess. Prowess is so good in so many other formats. It's worth looking at.
Yeah, I'll bring this up at the same time. I don't know if we have a list, but this is a Wizards deck that uses Wizards Lightning and Flame of Anor. So all of its threats are Wizards, Soulscar Mage, Symmetry Sage, Dreadhorde Arcanist, and Slickshot Show Off. I've also just played against Prowess, and Prowess is kind of impressive to me. They have, a lot of the stuff I had talked about in Pioneer, Academic Dispute, Talents Basics, nerfs Corey Steelcutter, but still kind of reasonable. And sometimes I wonder if just Prowess is better than this deck, is kind of the point I'm getting to, but this deck has its own
Okay.
thing going on that's somewhat useful.
Yeah. So the wizard package here is like what Flame of Anor and Wizard's Lightning, basically.
That's the payoff to playing all wizards, and I like that, this list I'm looking at now has like the full 16 wizards. That's cool. Makes sense. Also Giganta deck, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Dreadhorde Arcanist can be pretty good. It's really good with Swift Spear's teachings, which this card's been nerfed,
Yeah.
but it works out okay.
They have
You
Reckless
have to
Charge too.
choose
The original Wild Ride.
nice +3/+0.
Yep.
It's got flashback or something, right?
Yep, and when you give your Dreadhorde Arcanist plus 3/0 and haste, it could even cast something like Flame of Anor or Wizard's Lightning.
Yeah. I mean, so this deck does some things, but yeah, I just mostly have been able to beat it with most of the decks I play, so that doesn't seem like a great sign.
Yeah, it's not really disruptive at all. They can sideboard counterspells, but it's forever been a problem in Prowess that the counterspells are not actually good with the mechanic Prowess. Even though
Yeah.
you'd think your blue red spells deck might want them, they don't really. Um, and yeah, I just think this is a deck that is a little kind of vulnerable to Fatal Push, if anything.
Sure. Yeah, Fatal Push may be the most popular removal spell, and you don't have anything that costs more than two.
Yeah, and it's kind of that same problem where I just like if you lose the die roll versus Valakut with this deck, I think they're favored. You know, like that's the best like case for this deck. I feel like.
Yeah, that should be one of your good matchups, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, because you should, just, in theory, be able to just go fast and then do some counter spells, and then I guess you could build it just without the wizard stuff. You're
Yeah, that's
playing.
probably going to slow you down, to be honest. It would make you a lot better versus like the Jund Goyf deck in my mind, at least. But you certainly would be
Sure.
slower.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about this deck. I don't really like it.
Flame of Ignore is also like not even that good in a prowess deck, even if you just consistently got both modes.
Yeah. Okay. We've got one more deck before we go on to sort of the decks that we've been
Yep.
playing or we've built, and you're gonna have to tell me about this one. I've played against it once, and it was actually a different version than what we've got here. But this is blue white aquatic subtlety. So this card's a blue 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 sorcery. Draw two cards, then discard two cards. Blue creature cards in your hand perpetually. That's, an arena mechanic that works out fine on a digital client. Perpetually gain, evoke, exile a blue card from your hand. So what do they do with this card?
Yeah, so after they resolve it, the goal is they have Atraxa and Agent of Treachery. This list has Quantum Riddler in the sideboard. They also have Thundertrap Trainer in their main deck. So those are the blue creatures they have. They're trying to evoke them and ephemerate them. But Atraxa you can evoke and find ephemerate, kind of like the Goryo's deck does too. So honestly, this deck, as built, where it's kind of more controlling, it reminds me a lot of the modern Goryo's deck, where you're trying to play this 3-mana sorcery, give the things in your hand evoke. It's not even until end of turn, so like if you find a window to resolve the subtlety on turn 3, you can just do it, and then evoke and ephemerate later. This list in particular is kind of stretching its mana to use Tune the Narrative plus Wrath of the Skies. I was reading what they're saying on Twitter. They just believe Wrath of the Skies is really good in a bunch of matchups. I mean, certainly Affinity. Maybe I'm underrating like the ability to cast a big Wrath of the Skies. In my mind, why would you want Wrath of the Skies? And I guess it's like Affinity specifically, and like the card I compare it to in my mind is Supreme Verdict, which is blue. So the evoke exile a blue card from your hand thing makes me want to maximize blue cards. There's also a blue flicker, Essence Flux, which is basically ephemerate without rebounds, which, that's noticeably worse when you're just like assembling your stuff with Thundertrap Trainer, or honestly, really it's just noticeably worse with everything except Atraxa. And even though, flickering your Atraxa is cool, you do miss out on the combat and you just might not need the cards. But like when you do your combo with Agent of Treachery, I'm sure you're way happier to have ephemerate.
Yeah. First of all, on your Wrath of this guy's point, it is interesting because like Supreme Verdict is also pretty good against Affinity, and funny enough, you could get into a spot where if you're kind of relying on drawing the Wrath of the Skies a little later in the game and they have a ton of munitions tokens, you just can't even use Wrath of the Skies, whereas Verdict would actually be good.
Yeah, and I just think Verdict would be very good against Dimir and Jund. Like way better than Wrath of the Skies.
Yeah, and I mean that's been my
And
experience. It's actually pretty strong in the format. And then it's
like
it's blue.
The idea of building this deck as a blue-white kind of control deck is actually pretty like reasonable to me. I kind of like that. But I just Tune the Narrative Wrath of the Skies thing is really sticking out to me. Is like, why is that what you want to do instead of just put like some Supreme Verdicts in your deck?
Yeah. So the version of this deck I played against was actually a blue-black deck.
Yeah.
And
so the blue-black version will have Necromancy, Psychic Frog, Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, basically. That all makes sense to me too. That probably makes it harder to be a control deck. You're probably a lot more reliant on one of your combos going right. The Riddlers, I was really impressed with Riddler out of this deck. I would think I'd want to build my deck to be a main deck Riddler deck. I guess one of the cool things about Wrath of the Skies is it won't kill your own guys after you get one down.
Sure.
But I don't know how much that matters. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you're that good at like I don't know. Frog is just not really that impressive to me in this Fatal Push focused format and combo focused when like your disruption is not as good as it is in modern, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, Frog is a really inherently powerful card, so I get
It
why people
is.
want to play with it.
It's also like a 2 mana sorcery. You know, it big side note here, but everyone always talks about how good Frog is in Modern, and like decks like Goryo's are way better when they have Frog, and all those things are true, I guess. But like in the end, like the decks with Frog in Modern and in this format have still yet to be like that's the best deck in my mind, basically ever. You know, like it's never been in a deck where I've looked at it and gone, that's the best deck.
Yeah, they still have a lot to prove for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could say Frog's really good and just doesn't have the right shell, but I mean, I guess at the end
But
of the
one day you
day,
got to
maybe
maybe
it's
say
tricking
maybe
you. Maybe
maybe
it is
being
the
a
Frog.
yeah, it's kind of a fundamental issue with the cards you want to play with Frog, which is a lot of disruption, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
want to just be like a zoo aggro deck with that happens to have frogs.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the problem isn't like necessarily the card in a vacuum, but how it makes you build your
Yeah,
deck.
your deck just ends up being really kind of reactive, I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And you know, in this format, one of the kind of better reactive cards is Counterspell, which I'm not even sure is good with Frog.
Right. Like
It's
you
kind of
might just want
clunky.
to be more of like a flash deck with
Yeah,
Counterspell. And guys, just so you know, Jacob's not super biased because he actually does really like Frog and Cube Draft. So
yeah. No, Frog is one of the best cards in Cube. It also got banned in Legacy, probably deserved, you know, because you have Force of Will and Daze when you can play
it's
those
sick with
cards.
those
It's
guards.
broken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you,
I mean, this deck's a big unknown to me. This like aquatic subtlety deck. I would not touch it with a 10 feet pole. I just don't know.
yeah, it's one I haven't played around with yet, but I'm meaning to. You know, there's some other things too where like the mana on this format sometimes you just need to play Prismatic Vista, which is tough with the triple blue card, but I kind of like that at least now with Ephemerate you could like use that planes more that you're gonna play compared to like the swamp in the other deck. Doesn't really do anything. Um, I'm surprised
Yeah.
not to see like more blue lands, meaning Lorien Revealed and Sink into Stupor, because you just want like a higher blue card count maybe in your deck.
I feel like I'd
Um,
want to cut these pathways for like maybe Seacrum Coast, maybe Deserted Beach, maybe a Dark Carways, like just anything.
yeah, or maybe just even more Lorien Revealeds or whatever. But
Yeah, the pathways seem rough. I mean, obviously you got to play like up lanes or whatever at least, maybe even two. But
yeah, it's probably too hard to get to like the territory of adding some random green and black lands to cast Atroxa. But I was watching the Thief randomly queued into Edgar, his co-host today, and he played against this deck. The Thief was playing Blue White Control, and Edgar was, I think, playing this deck. I'm guessing pulled it from Twitter. I think Edgar boarded out the Atroxes for Quantum Riddler in that matchup, just to make sure everything in his deck was hard castable. But you know, at the same time, it makes you wonder if you're playing a controlling style deck. It sure is nice to be able to just like cast all your cards.
yeah, I mean that's a big strength the like Goryo's deck has, right? Where their mana is actually good. They have off-color surveil lands, which surveil
Yep.
lands being fetchable also makes this strategy better.
Yeah, if you ever go back and watch Johnny Gutman versus Shuhei at Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, I can't confirm this for sure, but like he plays like slow controlling game with Goryo's and then like eventually casts Atroxa, or maybe that's versus Blue White Control actually, maybe versus Francisco Sanchez. But anyways, the point is, I'm pretty sure he had 0 Goryo's in his deck and he boarded out all but like 2 of Atroxas or something. You know, like that's an
Yeah.
option that deck just has. You know, like I can just play Esper Control that has Atroxa at the top of my curve.
Yeah, totally. Especially with the kind of games that like Frog and whatnot make your opponent play.
Yeah.
It's going to drag the game out. Might as well be able to cast your stuff. Okay. All right. Let's get on to the good part. What what sort of decks have you been building since, I mean, not a ton of high level players are like looking at this format, so it stands to reason that there's a lot of unexplored territory.
Yeah, I've been looking at decks that also contain Valakut, but in different ways, I guess.
Sure.
And then
Which-
also last week I had mentioned my Grixis control deck. I've returned that a little bit, but since the Valakut uprising, it kind of has a huge issue against the card Valakut in general, and these big mana strategies.
yeah.
This deck, yeah, it's using the Chorus package. I think it's really good against Jungoifs. I think it's good against anything with creatures. I've tried to set up my sideboard to be able to board out a bunch of my removal, but I think I'm just going to have to get more narrow than that. The problem is, ultimately, versus Valakut, I've just got Alpine Moon, and even if I played 4 Alpine Moon, I feel like that it's not really going to solve my problems because my clock is really glacial.
Yeah, and they're in your sideboard. That's a problem too.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I'm really vulnerable to, if somebody put something in their deck that kind of could sidestep some of the narrowness of the red-green deck, like alternate threats like Vibrance or Ugin, or I thought about Hexing Squelcher today. Veil of Summer's not legal, but, like they could just, what if they just played Hexing Squelcher and played Scapeshift, stuff like that.
Yeah. You don't have a ton of catch-all answers. You've got some counter spells,
Yeah,
but mostly you're just kind of focused on killing creatures.
Yeah, and then the problem is too, when I built this deck, and I haven't really touched on it too much since last week, but my thoughts were, I've Bind to Secrecy, which is a negate variant, and Force Negations in my sideboard, and if my removal is bad, then like surely my negates will be kind of good. But then like this is the type of deck that can lose to just like Ice Till playing a bunch of mountains and one Valakut, So it's just like a huge issue.
Yeah, for sure.
As well as just the Dryad killing you fast, So like, you need to have answers to Dryad and Valakut. You basically need answers to all card types in that matchup, and it's just a huge problem.
It is a pretty powerful strategy. I've played with the chorus cards a bit. They're quite strong. Lures is obviously great.
Yeah, I love the Ballad card when it's good, and this is a deck I've queued into the Boros Oros deck a lot, and
nice.
them leaving up their hexproof spells the whole game, or even having Mother of Ruins, and me just saying everybody sacrifices all their creatures is a huge blowout.
And you get a bunch of life. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I could see this deck being really strong if you had some reason to believe the metagame would be a certain way and it would be relatively narrow, but I just don't think that's going to be what's going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, I guess that can, in theory, happen in day 2.
Yeah, but I just think the Valakut decks are still going to be good in day 2.
Yeah, or people will do well with them in day 1, and then they'll just queue them up again.
Yeah, or people will switch to them on day 2, even specifically because they think it's all Jund or something, and they.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. All right. So we could put that one on the back burner. What about I know you had a version of a Valakut deck that was a little different, and by a little different, I mean you have Cryptic Command in your deck.
Yeah. So I built a Temur Scapeshift deck, which kind of comically in the old days of Modern was a deck. And kind of comically, the decks I was looking at beating with this deck were Jund, Affinity, and Red-Green Valakut, which might have been what somebody said over a decade ago, looking at this deck.
That's hilarious. Too. Yeah, this deck literally looks like it came from 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's got the Remands, Growth Spiral, Consult the Star Charts, Cryptic Command, Scapeshift. My mana base is a bunch of islands and mountains. I think my mana is actually not like a huge issue with this deck. I have also 28 lands, and only 4 of them don't make blue. All of my mountains are islands because it's 4 Steam Vents, 4 Thundering Falls, 4 Ketchery Triumph. I do think that's a lot of tap lands. Because this is not an Ice Tail deck, I don't have the exploration stuff, so it's a bit slower. What I ended up learning with this deck is I don't think it's good against Red-Green Valakut because you're a lot slower. They end up playing spells really fast. You have to remand them instead of casting things like Growth Spiral, and then they just cast them again next turn, and you lose to them. So you don't really have time to ramp.
Would it help if your rebands were just counter spells, you think?
Maybe. Yeah, actual counterspell is a card in the 75 I'm seriously considering if I continue playing this deck, maybe even paired with Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster would not be like the worst kind of thing in this deck to have access to, maybe 1 or 2 copies. I have some Flex Spots main and like 2 Chain Lightnings and 2 Dress Down. The Chain Lightning is kind of a cute thing where like I do think this deck, wants to maybe win with the exact 18 damage 7 land thing a lot. So having some burn spell to find, I think, can matter. But then the more I play, the more that just never comes up, and I find the ability to like tap draw my way another turn. One of the other really good blue cards in this deck is Mistrise Village, which I started with 1 and went to 2 copies. In fact, added it as a 28th land. I mean, this is like the best Mistrise Village deck you'll ever get because the card Scapeshift requires you to have basically extra mana lying around anyways, and it's a win the game card. And your deck is a Temur deck, so it also enters untapped all the time.
Man, can you imagine Mistrise Village in the old Modern deck?
Yeah, exactly. And people just point to counterspell. I still have the Song of Seasons card in this deck because I just think it's a really good 2-for-1. Because it seeks a mountain, I have 12 mountains. Really old Scapeshift decks, if you're really knowledgeable, usually had like 10. but I know I'm getting some of the mountains out of my deck somewhat often. Um, yeah, it's a really redundant deck. I guess this deck kind of is really good against people trying to beat Scapeshift, is what I'd say. Um, just you have all these, the remands and cryptic commands really get you places. You have consult the star charts to find these things. If the game goes long at all, this deck's just like quite good. I was trying to think, I'm vulnerable to my Valakut or Scapeshift getting surgicaled. Like, what am I going to do about that? Obviously, hope it doesn't happen is like the main thing. I was wondering if there's a single card I could like put in my sideboard to beat that, and I actually think Hullbreaker Horror might work. In common, other creatures I've considered playing: Snapcaster, Endurance, Vibrance, maybe even Zillion Click. Those could all also kind of like beat down, especially because people board out of the removal. This deck's completely creatureless main. I originally had Kahira, and I cut the Kahira for Hullbreaker Horror because the Kahira just didn't do anything.
Yeah, in Control, Kahira is kind of nice because sometimes you can pitch it, and then a lot of the times, you grind your opponent down, and then having something left over is good. That's not really happening with this deck.
Yeah, I will say I did have a blue-white opponent Field of Ruin my Valakut and Surgical it, and I played a Vibrance and shot them in the face with it and played counter spells, and they Supreme Verdicted me, and I just bounced through my Vibrance and killed them with it.
Yeah, I was about to ask if maybe you wouldn't play Vibrance main, but then I thought, well, maybe you don't have enough red for it to be reliably...
It's very much a 5-drop in this deck. It's not really evocable on either mode early.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because of all the islands.
But I like that in the control matchup, it's a threat that can like get Mysterized Village, maybe answer a random thing too.
Mm-hmm. Boy, it's kind of too bad that Chain Lightning's your best 1-mana option here.
Yep. If it was Lightning Bolt, I'd be really happy about it. It's not. Dress Down is pretty cool. I mean, the card I wish was on Arena, this isn't banned in Historic, it's just not on Arena, is Fire Ice. That would be a pretty nice one for this deck.
Yeah, I could see that. Is this something is this one of your serious contenders, or have you dismissed it?
I think I've kind of dismissed it because of the Red-Green Valakut matchup. It's just... I mean, I said this at the beginning of the podcast, but these decks, they have to really build their whole deck around exploration, but when they like have the turn 1 exploration, they're incredibly broken. It's just one of the best things you can do in this format, but it is a really big deck building cost.
All right. I haven't played with this deck, but I bet after this tournament's over, I mean, I've really enjoyed playing Historic, honestly. It's been a ton of fun. I'll have to try this deck after this weekend.
Yeah, this is also a deck that has like access to Relic of Progenitus. It doesn't use its own graveyard, which is kind of cool.
I could see having those main, maybe a couple.
Yeah, it's been a contender. And then the Dress Downs are kind of cool too against the Goyf decks. They're also like they're kind of just surprisingly in line. It's kind of like a Cryptic tap draw. It's not as good, but it only costs 2 mana. But like sometimes your opponent just like has a Psychic Frog and you just like Dress Down it, stuff like that. And
yeah, and sometimes it just does a lot for what you're paying, basically, which is like 2 mana and not a card. So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. And then there's more. Okay, there's more big green decks, believe it or not. Although this one doesn't even. Well, do you want to talk about your Eldrazi deck next, or the Nykthos deck?
Eldrazi. I mean, the Nykthos deck is mostly just a deck other people play.
Fair enough. All right. Let's have a look. See. I believe we talked about this a little bit last time.
Yeah, last week I had like 3 Ugins and 3 Emrakuls in my main deck.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's actually a lot different.
Yeah, so I've completely cut the Ugin's Labyrinth part of the deck. So for listeners, this deck has 4 Exploration, 4 Kami, 4 Rumble, 4 Kozilek's Command, 4 Sowing Mycospawn, 4 Ice Till Explorer, 4 The One Ring, and then I have 2 Dryads, 1 copy of 6, and 1 copy of Emrakul the Promised End. I've played this deck with just 4 Dryads a lot too, and I've recently cut 2 of them for the 6 and the Emrakul. My mana base, I won't read everything, but it's got either Prismatic Vistas, Ghost Quarters. It has Arid Archway, the Desert bounce land, which is really nice for like giving me color sources. And then I have 2 Valakuts. So this deck is a mono green ramp deck that usually wins with. I mean, it can really only win with either Dryad, Valakut, or Emrakul in the main deck. But what I really like about this deck compared to the Valakut deck, that I get access to Kozilek's Command, which is just like it's so strong, I guess I'd say. It's hard to put interactive spells in a ramp deck, right? Because you don't want to just like play a Dismember, have it be bad in the matchup, or even when you play it, you're not progressing your own game plan at all. And Cosmos Command is just like, you have outs to creatures in your deck, you can kill creatures, you can interact with your opponent's graveyard, and even though a lot of the time you cast it, you just say, make spawns that draw a card, the times that you do exile a creature or interact with your opponent's graveyard is like totally game winning. It's just
also nice to have an instant.
Exactly. It's good against counter spells too.
Yeah, like a big card that's an instant. Obviously, you'd prefer if you had more instants, but hey, having 1/4 of it's an instant is better than nothing.
Sowing Mycospawn, also a good against counter spells kind of card. It has this uncounterable trigger. Consigned Memory is not very popular in this format right now. I'm sure you'll still counter it sometimes. Sometimes I play against Lotus Field decks that just have the main. Luckily, this deck is, a mix of green cards and colorless cards, so it's not like the end of the world. And, I'm kind of comparing this deck side by side to the Valakut deck because so many of the spells are the same. Rumble is kind of here instead of Farseek, and Rumble is just, a digging tool. It's like a gas spell instead of Farseek, which is just only a land. It fuels Ice Till. I think being able to play for the one Emrakul or the Dryad stuff is just effective enough to win. The 6 lets you can just kind of loop One Rings with the 6, so that's an angle I liked having access to. Some decks can't beat that. Even the Jund Goyf deck, I've realized, has struggled with that. You might say, well, they could kill your 6. That's true. This deck has 2 Shifting Woodlands, which I think is really what sets it apart from the Scape Shift deck on its Ice Till Explorer power level. Because if I go Exploration into Ice Till, I just think, which by the way happens more in this deck than the Valakut deck, because A, I have more untapped turn 1 green sources by 4, and B, I have the bounce lands, which means I'll just have Exploration plus 4 mana more often, I think. But anyways, Ice Till is just like a card that can solo the game in this deck, is kind of the biggest sell to it. You can mill and find Shifting Woodland. The Shifting Woodland can just become Dryad or something, which will work with Valakut. Or it can become 6, and 6 can start retracing your One Rings. You can play Arid Arcways to bounce themselves and just discard them and play them from your graveyard. So you can infinitely ringlock people, and even if they can interact with your 6, if they can't interact with your graveyard, you can Shifting Woodland to 6 every turn of the game once you have enough mana.
Yeah. Have you played much against the head-to-head against Valakut?
Yeah, and I believe I'm not super favored, but I believe it's just kind of a race. I think my deck is kind of equally fast. I think I can just do my things just about as fast as them. It's nice that both of us have the One Ring. It's kind of equally good at, protecting us from things. My Emrakul isn't getting through it either. But, it's hard for me to ghost quarter them out. That's definitely true. I might be able to ghost quarter them off green. That's kind of notable. I also have Mycospawn. So I think I do, especially on the play, have another kind of nut draw that can be really potent against them, which is just turn 3, you kick Mycospawn to start the game.
Okay. Yeah, I played against the head-to-head once and won. But, I didn't feel like I was behind, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's not a lot I can do to say my deck is going to be, super favored when I build my deck like this, but I have some feeling that I think my deck is basically as good as theirs, but maybe just attacking from an angle that I kind of like a lot more.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I'll say is, with the exception of the 6 and the Emrakul, and 6 is at least a cheap card, but my whole deck is just both enablers and payoffs almost, if that makes sense. It's kind of really amazing. Nothing in my deck besides the Emrakul costs more than 4. The One Ring, just is this fog that draws cards. The Ice Till ramps me mana, but also finds my win cons. The Mycospawn is a ramp spell, but also finds my win cons. Dry is the same thing. Rumble's the same thing. Cosmos Command's the same thing. They're all ramp spells.
Especially with the Ice Till Explorer, being able to play things out of your graveyard, the bounce lands. Well, first of all, I've been really happy with the bounce lands. They're amazing. They work really well to make sure you have enough lands to get to 4 mana, which is where the kind of the breaking point you need to start getting card advantage. And they're really good to play off at turn 1 Kami or turn 1 Exploration. So there's that. And then also they, like you said, they allow for certain loops where you can get access to your Boseiju by milling it with your Ice Till Explorer, because if you also mill an Arcway, you could play it and then bounce your Boseiju.
Yep, this deck also has the one Echoing Caverns, which has the exhaust ability, and you can reset it.
Yeah, that card's surprisingly good.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you can't name Eldrazi and deterministically like hit Emrakul. Um, that is annoying, but oh well. But you
Hmm,
can name Tree Folk if you want 6. You can name Dryad if you want Dryad. You can name Insect for Ice Till. You can even name Fungus if you want specifically Microspawn.
there you go.
So you have a lot of options there. I have some sideboard cards with that in mind. Endurance mostly is one that you just name Elemental and draw Endurance in a graveyard needed matchup. And I have Wastegate Battle Mage over I guess Haywire Might, which maybe it's the problem with Haywire Might is it's only an insect, so you can't deterministically get it with the Caverns.
Hmm.
And I kind of like the Wastegate Battle Mage idea, but maybe it won't matter in practice. Just it's a 2/2. It's an Eldrazi Wizard to be clear, so you can name Wizard and deterministically get it. And if you do that, you'll have a blue source because the Cavern is naming Wizard.
Right.
The other notable thing, so I'm playing Grove of the Burn Willows as a green colorless land. You could play Haship Oasis. That would cost you life, and it wouldn't work with my sideboards, but it is a desert. So in the sequence where you go turn 1, Exploration, Arid Archway, and bounce it, you would Surveil 1.
Funny.
But I like my red sideboard cards. I also don't like losing life. This is a ramp deck with the One Ring. Losing life is kind of terrible. Giving your opponent a life doesn't matter at all, even with the Valakut kills I've found.
Yeah,
The red cards.
Grow's been great.
Yeah, in my sideboard, I have a mountain to get with Prismatic Vista. Once I board in that mountain, I'm up to, I guess, 11 red sources in my lands. Plus, I have, Rumbles and Dryads and Ice Till to help me find red sources, even Myco Spawn. And I just have 2 Meltdowns and 2 Alpine Moons, which aren't even for the same matchup. So, really, I think it's fine to have, like, kind of a, what you'd call maybe a suboptimal red source count when I'm only going to have 2 cards in my deck at the most that matter. And I guess kind of the juke I have in my sideboard, because this is a very graveyard-centric deck to some extent, is I just have a couple Ugin Eye of the Storms in my sideboard, which I had mentioned in the Valakut deck, though I think this deck has more ramp, maybe because it's better at playing lands, but also Myco Spawn and Kozilek's Command, compared to just, I guess, the Cultivate type card in the Valakut deck if you like put everything side by side. So I think I play Ugin on turn 3, like, without my graveyard somewhat often in this deck, to be honest, and it just answers everything. And I have more colorless cards in this deck with Myco Spawn and Kozilek's Command 2. So I do think that even though Ugin does not have text on it that like literally wins the game, I think if like my Emrakul and my Valakuts got Surgical, I could kill my opponent with Myco Spawns and Ice Till Explorers with Ugin on the battlefield, exiling all their blockers.
Okay, probably. I mean, people don't have like super like heavy late game setups generally. So
Yeah. Also,
should be
if you ult the Ugin, you can cast every Myco Spawn in your deck on top of that too, and like the other Ugin if you haven't.
Yeah, I mean that should be plenty. And a lot of the time, you can like lock your opponent out of some lands, and they can't actually do that much to handle you, anyways.
Yeah, this deck also just has like the Ghost Quarter Ice Till thing, which is surprisingly, like I said, not that good against the Valakut deck. But most decks in the format don't have that many basics, and even though they're playing more than maybe you'd expect because of Prismatic Vista, that more still just ends up being like 4 or 5, and they're fetching them aggressively. So, for example, you can go, I've gone turn 1 Exploration, turn 2 Myco Spawn for Ghost Quarter, and then turn 3 play Ice Till, and I still have an untapped Ghost Quarter, and I have 3 land drops available, so I can Ghost Quarter 4 times on turn 3 on the play.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty insane.
Like, which is just like another way to win the game, even though it doesn't literally do it. Like you can lock your opponent out very fast.
Mm-hmm. So for what it's worth, I played this deck a lot today, and I did not have your most updated version. It didn't have Emrakul, and I didn't know your sideboard.
Fair enough.
So I wanted the deck to have a little bit more power and versatility, and I added 4 Karn, the 4-mana Karn
makes
to the
sense.
main deck. Cutting a couple Myco Spawns, a Dryad, and I can't remember what else,
A
but
land,
something.
you said, but yeah.
A land. Oh yeah, I did end up putting that land back, but like instead of the Emrakul or whatever. So
Yeah.
and the Karn, I have a Karn sideboard, so that looks like just the 15 1-0s essentially. I've got like a green artifact land to go fetch, and then a bunch of stuff, Wormcoil Engine, some Graveyard Hate, and I've been pretty happy with the Karn. I'm going to make sure to try your list as it is now, because maybe this is better, but the card certainly has some advantages. It's another payoff card that works well when you have a lot of mana, which is, this deck can do,
Yep.
and it has some good effects into the format, like it's pretty good against to ramp out against Affinity. Just in general, this deck can play 4-drops absurdly fast. So when you have a Karn down that early, it does a lot of damage to a lot of decks.
It's definitely true. Yeah.
And it has a lot of it has a lot of versatility. I'm not sure that versatility is worth giving up your sideboard because you do have some good cards here. But it could be. Karn's proved itself to be a really powerful card.
Yeah. I mean, I guess all of the decks I'm worried about is just like combat oriented, and also is there like a Karn bullet that's exceptionally good against the Scapeshift deck? Is it just you kind of just have to be fast and get liquid metal coating and kill their lands, right? But like I'm worried that especially on the draw, you won't keep up with their ability to put the lands into play, and also against Ice Tail Explorer that kind of stops working.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much all I was doing. That did happen one game where I just played it really early and then started killing their lands, and I outraced them easily.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like against fast combo, there's gonna be issues. I beat Lotus Field combo today with this deck, thanks to kind of its potential speed, I'd say.
Sure, nice. Yeah, another thing that was going on is, like I said, I was lower in rank and I was playing against a lot of Wild West decks, and the Karn sideboard like got a lot of people. Like I played against a Ruby Storm deck, had a Dampening Sphere 4, and played against some reanimation stuff, and I had sideboard Graveyard Hate and all that sort of thing. I cut a 1 ring. That's what I did.
Oh, because you have one in your sideboard. Yeah, makes sense.
To put into the sideboard, which I think is worth it if you're gonna play 4 Karn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something to consider if you want to try this deck.
Yeah.
And have time to try both versions. Now, is this a deck that you're seriously considering?
Yeah, it is. Out of my kind of brews, I think this is my front runner. And like I've said multiple times now, it's just when you have exploration in your opening hand, which, the math says in like a 7-card sample is going to be like 39% of your games. And I think in reality, with mulliganing and the fact that you're going to be not aggressively mulliganing for exploration, but you are going to be kind of aggressively keeping hands that have it, I think 4-ofs end up being closer to like 50-50s on your opening hands. Mm-hmm. Also, I've just got the rumbles and things like that sometimes you hit exploration off your rumble and it's great still,
Yeah. I was mulliganing kind of slow hands. Like if I'm on the draw and my first play was turn 3, I was mulliganing.
Yeah, there's certainly
that sort of thing.
Only the 12 cheap cards in this deck that cost less than 3, which is the same as the Scapeshift deck. I thought, Dryad was just a card, that I realized could both win the game of Valakut, but also this deck just loves exploration effects. And even though it's kind of slow, on the play, I think, it might be more acceptable to keep hands depending on the matchup. If you know it's a Thoughtseize deck or whatever, you can probably keep slower hands. The Gemstone Caverns in the sideboard also is kind of a nod to like the lack of things to do early. I thought I might as well have an extra one on the draw.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's not nothing that since you have this card that's like extremely good to start with exploration, it's not that big of a deal if you have to mulligan a bit more because, you're going to keep all your hands where you have exploration. So if you mulligan, you get another chance to get at least like if you mulligan a hand that doesn't have a cheap spell.
Yeah, and like the bounce lands also help a ton when you mulligan. Another thing about them.
Yeah, honestly, I bet this deck's more consistent than Valakut between the bounce lands and sort of the inherent synergy being a little higher.
Yeah, and it's like
not sure about the strength overall.
Yeah, and I said this before too, but like the card Scapeshift only does something when you want to win, which is true of Emrakul in this deck, but that's a 1-of, not a 4-of.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of my deck, 6 kind of only does something when you already have done other things. It's nice that, you could just play it on turn 2 and maybe attack with it and get a lands, but that's not totally true of it. But, I only have 2 cards in my deck, I'd say, Emrakul and 6, that basically, like, don't work if I don't have a lot of mana.
How good is 6? Do you think I should have that in my Karn version? Because I didn't.
If you have the Karns as win cons, you probably don't really need them.
Okay.
I had it and Emrakul in my sideboard and just kind of realized it didn't make sense to board in more graveyardy stuff. And I've kind of just looked at Ugin. I've sideboarded Wormcoil Engine in this deck before too, something to keep in mind. But you can also just name Worm. Just kind of a powerful thing to ramp into, like Voltron decks in some matchups. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I think like it just works out. The retrace plus shifting woodland thing works pretty well to kind of rebuy your whole deck. You can even, cast Emrakul. I think it's just a good one of. And I mean, the unnerfed One Ring, when 6 came out, I did this same kind of combination, all these same cards in Amulet Titan in some post board games. And that was kind of before the analyst loop time. Even though that was all legal, I guess. It just hadn't caught on as much. But it is really good with 4 One Rings in your deck to play 6, I'll say.
Yeah, makes sense. There's one more deck we haven't covered, and that's Green Devotion.
Yeah, this is another big mana deck that I've played against a little bit. I like that it potentially has access to Elishnorn, like I'd mentioned for the Valakut matchup, and it's just kind of naturally good in this deck. You just hit it off Storm or play it, and it has a lot of ETBs. This is like the old Pioneer deck. Kind of a big mana combo-y deck. It has some kind of mana dork big mana problems where you can be good against, I think, the Jund deck when you just like have Utopia Sprawl and hit your land drops. But honestly, the Goyf sizing is kind of problematic for like Stick and Kiora. But you definitely go over the top of many things when your stuff works, and you literally combo kill people with your big devotion numbers, and you can do loops with the Pestilent Cauldron card, like just picking up Karn and Kiora. There's no Chain Veil, which used to be the card you'd use to go infinite in more ways than just infinite life and infinite mana and Karn, and actually win the game. I asked around and was told you could play Mindslaver, and Chain Veil costs 4 to play, 4 to activate, and you have to have 2 mana left to activate Nykthos, so it effectively costs 10. And Mindslaver also costs 10, and unlike Emrakul, Mindslaver does not give them a turn afterwards, so I believe it's like very lethal. Like, it's basically take an extra turn when you have 30 power in play. So sure. I think that'll just work.
Yeah, totally. Do you have the sense for if this deck's any faster or slower than Valakut?
No, not really. I think
Fanatic
it's slower.
Baroness can lead to some really fast draws if it doesn't die.
Yeah, that one's been impressive. It's also something kind of resilience. But once again, the resiliency stuff matters a lot more against more dedicated, I guess, control decks, or maybe the Dimir decks. The Jund deck, they kill your guys and then they play giant monsters when their deck works. So things have to it's hard to kind of recover from them killing your guys and playing giant monsters, I guess is what I'd say from a deck like this.
Yeah, especially since their monsters go face and kill you really fast. It's kind of funny. They
almost
almost
your
play out
planeswalkers in one shot, more importantly.
Yeah. The Jund deck has some similarities with the Valakut deck in that way, where just sort of kills you with these big expensive things that go face. But yeah, I'm not too sure about this deck either. I did play against it, and it was the sort of thing where they won, but it was like a blowout based on whoever was on the play each game. So I don't know.
Yeah, this deck kind of reminds me of the Temur Scape Shift deck almost, where it's kind of just slower, and I think it's pretty good against counter spells. It has a lot of tools against those, especially with Halfling, and multi-spelling with mana that it kind of develops early, but it's just kind of vulnerable to some of the disruption going on, and I'm not sure it's actually good against the Valakut deck, which is definitely still in part because there's just no good bullet with Karn to get against Scape Shift. I mean, you can get the One Ring and live, but they could still kill your Karn.
Yeah. What if you brought in more Elishnorns or something?
Yeah, maybe. You could just be a deck that tries to ramp out an Elishnorn on turn 3. That would be somewhat effective.
Would it be crazy to have Plains and Elishnorn in your other deck? In the sideboard?
I think the Alpine Moon is just going to play out
good
better.
Enough.
And I've got the Alpine Moon's also findable off Rumble.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would just be.
I mean, you find Elishnorn off Rumble too, right? But it's just slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that on turn 2, I could play the Alpine Moon off Rumble.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you don't really sound like you're gonna have a good recommendation for what people should play, but what are you leaning towards at the moment? I know, honestly, 30% of your decision process hasn't even happened yet, even though it's only a couple days away because we've only been preparing for a couple weeks. But
yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is Red Green Valakut, my green deck, Jund Goyfs. Those are probably my top 3 decks I'd recommend right now. I have not really touched Aquatic Subtlety deck. If you play that deck and like it, it looks pretty good to me. I had already mentioned the Wrath of the Skies thing is a little weird. I think this deck could be improved upon, but I like the direction it's going.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't really know, I think you have to play answers to the Jund Goyf's creatures in that deck is what I'd mostly point at.
I guess you shared this deck with me too. Do you want to touch on this at all?
Yeah, I have not played this deck yet, but I realized, this deck looks very similar to the old modern Arclight Phoenix decks. It has, now thanks to Manamorphose, it has the same number of free spells as the old decks even had. So like my mana curve here is like very similar to the old ones. It has buffed Demi-Lich, which is a weird card, and I don't even know what the buff is besides 1 extra toughness. Is that it?
Oh, it's buffed. That's why you have it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know at all. It's curious.
Just 1 extra toughness. It might not even be good. It's a little bit better of a card, I thought, with Manamorphose being legal. It might not be worth playing, but it is kind of in the theme of the Phoenix deck. It's also not like completely graveyard reliant. Like if you had gotten Rest in Peace, you could still like play a 0 mana 4/4 while casting your spells, right? And I was looking for like sideboard jukes that didn't use your graveyard, and honestly, nerfed Steel Cutter is, I think, the best card in that category anyways, and then I actually thought it would just be good enough and kind of on theme enough to play in your main deck as 4 copies. The nerf is that it does not give +1/+1 in trample, so its clock is slower, but it's still really resilient and hard to interact with threat that is just going to make, a monk every turn of the game.
Okay, so something to think about, that deck.
Yeah, you have looting. Lightning Axe is kind of well positioned in this format. It's also like an instant that can kill Jarsel that we talked about before. I also thought it was kind of cute. You can ponder like Phoenix to the top and then use Thought Scour or Consider even on like your upkeep next turn and mill them. The mana is a little annoying. You basically want as many blue-red duels as possible, which made me think you just want to play 4 Fiery Islet. But I don't know. It seemed like a deck that maybe could be good against Jund, but maybe their creature sizing is going to be a problem. I'm not sure how fast it is yet. And Demi-Lich might be completely unplayable.
Right. It's a little bit of a mystery to me of how good Corey Steelcutter still is. It did get quite nerfed. Obviously, it was such a broken card that it's not absurd that it would still be good and the perfect deck for it.
Yeah, my thought is basically if your opponent is really loaded up on Graveyard Hate, I can't imagine there's a better card.
Right.
They might only be in the sideboards, but you've kind of needed those sideboard jukes before, and it's just what the artifact that makes monks is without using your graveyard is just so it's just so not something your opponent can really hedge for while also hedging for the rest of your deck. There's also, you could just play Into the Floodmaw or whatever in this deck. That's a card that might be good too. But
sure. Okay. Lastly, I'll share my control deck, which I'm definitely not going to play for day one. Not that I think it's bad or poorly built or anything. It's just there's so many different ways that you could build it that I find it hard to imagine that I found the right one, and then it's such an open field that, especially day one, I think you might run into a lot of problems. But I'll share it anyways. I love Blue-White Control. I have been playing Yorion. Jacob brought this up to me that Yorion's just really good against Thoughtseize decks, and that's definitely true. I mean, you could essentially play the whole game where Yorion just sits in your command zone, and you just never add it to your hand until you're ready to play it for 8 mana. And in that way, it can be really good. And it has been really good against Jund. It has, there's other matchups where I've sort of wished I've had a 60-card deck, but so I'm not 100% sure you should even have Yorion. One of the things I am playing, though, is Wan Shi Tong Librarian. I've actually been pretty happy with it, and you can't play Wan Shi Tong with Kihira. So,
yep.
Kind of makes sense to do it in Yorion.
Yeah. No, Wan Shi Tong seems pretty good. The Valakut deck does some searching. Comically, their Cultivate does not search. It seeks.
Yeah.
But you have Path to Exile. You have Field of Ruin. Something it might look pretty minor, but as someone that's played these cards side by side, I know it's not. You're playing Path to Exile as your removal, among other things. Makes sense. I think you just kind of are forced into it in these colors. And you're playing 4 Wall of Omens, which is kind of a Yorion card. But pathing your own Wall of Omens is a very normal and common thing in these types of decks.
Oh yeah, especially in matchups where they don't have creatures you're dying to path early.
Yeah. Or maybe you just need to, you can play Verdict with Counterspell up or something 1 turn sooner. Stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to just go with all 4 paths, because the thing with Path to Exile is a lot of the time the first few will be kind of bad, but then once you've played out the game and maybe you feel the rune in them a little bit and they've drawn a lot of their deck, a lot of the time you're like second, or maybe not even second, but like your third and fourth paths will just be, the best removal you could have. So
makes total sense. Yeah. Something else. I mean, you have March of Otherworldly Light. I don't know if there's a better answer to the One Ring. I just know playing control decks, the One Ring resolving can be a total nightmare sometimes.
Yeah, at least it's 4 mana.
Yeah.
You can bounce it with Cryptic. Cryptic's been another card that's been pretty good in this format, I would say.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's nice. One of the things that's going on with this deck, though, is like every card I want to play almost is 4 mana, so I'm not sure which of them you have to play. Wan Shi Tong a lot of the time will be 4 mana. Consult a lot of the time will be 4 mana, and then obviously I've got all those others. So you do have to make some concessions. I'm not sure exactly which you should play.
Makes sense.
I like having the one Jace. It's actually there are certain decks it's just quite good against, like blue-black style of decks. Even Jund, they have Pyrogoyf, but other than that, they don't have like lightning bolts or anything. So
yeah, I mean, blue-black makes a ton of sense. You can catch them with 1 threat or 0 a lot of the games, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I could see having like 2 Jace. I had one Jace and a Legend of Kurikan for a while. Legend of Kuruk was basically, in my mind, this kind of the same thing as Jace.
Great.
But yeah, and then the sideboard. Let's see what's interesting about the sideboard. Pinnacle Starcage is pretty good against. It does the thing against Affinity where it like hits their lands and all their stuff.
Yep.
So that's nice. It's nice against the Red White Auras deck. It acts as more sweepers besides just your 4 verdicts. So some of those in the sideboard.
The Thief had a similar sorcery arena only today that I don't know the name of. Let me see if I can rifle my way into it.
Yeah.
But I think it also hit all
something?
sorceries. It all also hit creatures and artifacts.
Yeah. But what it does is it puts them into exile and makes them cost 2 more.
It kind of airbends them, right? It go cost 2 more. Divine Purge.
There you go.
It's mana value 3 or less is a key part of that text, I guess. It's like Emery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that might be the right one to play. I actually had a couple games with that. I played with that card a little bit, and I just really quickly, I had games where I cast it, and then my opponent was able to replay stuff, and I lost. Stuff.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's a lot more like an Avatar's Wrath type card, even if they are more expensive.
Yeah, so I think maybe not for control. Also, I've been really happy with Monumental Henge in this deck. It's just like a really strong land for my mana
that
base.
Makes sense. And it hits the Starcage. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it hits Starcage, hits Wan Shi Tong, hits Wandering Emperor, it's Jace, hits Otawara. I didn't feel like I could play a Gonjo because I have 2 planes, 2 Monument, 4 Field Ruin, and I am a counterspell deck, so
makes sense. Yeah.
I'm trying to curb that stuff. Vendilion Click and Tamio similarly are kind of nice legends that I can use against combo style decks and whatnot when you have to board out a ton of your removal, because I kind of have a lot in the main deck, and they can be hit with Henge too. Elish Norn, the same. So
cool.
Pretty fun deck, pretty happy with it, but there's a world between now and Sunday if I were to make day 2, I would consider it, but yeah, I'm not going to play it for day 1.
That makes sense. Yeah, and the Valakut thing is kind of scary, I imagine, still.
Yeah, and it helps that I actually haven't played against Valakut yet, so I'm not sure. It might be bad. I mean, I've got 4
like I said, it's
counters.
It's the type of thing where the Field of Ruins and the counter spells are going to punish like that type of deck more.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I think my mono green deck, and not that people are playing these decks, but people still play Eldrazi ramp too, and that might be scary.
Yeah, I don't have any consigns. Maybe
it's hard to play consign right now. It's like the kind of, how do I put it? The decks that aren't just playing creatures and attacking you with them have really demonstrated themselves as not really being the decks you want to consign.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking Rune Halo and Elish Norn's going to be really good against them.
Yeah,
Wan Tong.
I
So
agree. And they're just like
we'll
kind of
see.
cards that are impossible for you to probably feel like you can main deck, but with the exception of Wan Tong, but they might, win you those sideboard games. Games are probably going to go kind of long.
Yeah, and honestly, thinking about it, Dress Down's kind of decent against some like Explorer and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. This interaction keeps coming up a lot in this format for me. For those that know, Dress Down has really weird applications with how layers work.
Sure
Uh,
does.
it does basically nothing against Harbinger of the Season, Magus of the Moon. So keep that in mind. They will still turn all the non-basic lands into either mountains or islands. And similarly, another thing that changes land types is Dryad of the Elysian Grove. So if you dress down Dryad of the Elysian Grove, they can't play an additional land, but all of their lands will still be all types, and their Valakutes will still be very lethal.
Yeah. So
So
good card against the insect, but not so much against the Dryad.
yeah,
Yeah. Shut it down for a turn, then oust or whatever.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah. I was impressed in my Grixis deck. When the dress down stopping something for a turn, and then also sacking on their end step and giving me Revolted Fatal Push. That was
Nice.
kind of a nice little sequence.
Nice. Yeah, I've kind of been wanting to try Esper Control, but I've been stuck on this for now. Fatal Push is
Yeah.
really good.
Yep.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, that'll do it for this one, folks. Thanks for listening. Not sure what people think of Historic yet, but boy, I actually am going to recommend people give it a try because I think it's been a ton of fun. Maybe it's because it's kind of nostalgic for me because some of the cards that are good or some of the cards I have loved to play with in the past, but I don't know. I feel like the games are quite nice.
Yeah,
So,
it's been pretty fun. I mean, if you are the type that drafts a lot on Arena, for example, and you're wild card flooded, which I know is not everybody, but it's certainly a nice to explore some of these Arena formats if you're kind of wild card flooded. And to be honest, I'm soon to be maybe out. I feel like I have like 20 rares and 20 mythics left after a lot of brewing, but
yeah, I mean, that's fair, right? I think that's what maybe keeps a lot of people from playing it. If
yeah.
they play the other formats, then it's hard to justify crafting a bunch of new rares and mythics and whatnot. But hey, if you've got them, it's fun.
And it's nice once you get into it too. It's kind of like building a modern collection almost, where then you go back to build a different deck and you realize, like I had that whole arc life. I crafted Manamorphoses, which were uncommons, and I had like the whole Arclight Phoenix deck because I'd played with some Arclight Phoenix stuff before.
Thank you for listening to the Stock Up Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, you can support us over on patreon.com/stockuppodcast. That is the best way to support us. At the moment, it's $1 a month, and you get access to all of our exclusive content that we post over there, as well as access to our Stock Up Podcast Discord, which is growing, and I think we have a lot of fun conversations over there. So go check that out. Of course, you could also follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe while you're there. And Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that jazz. You can listen to us there, anywhere. And we want to thank our patrons that have been with us from the start, a lot of you, and whoever has joined recently. We really do appreciate it. It means a lot. So please enjoy the rest of the episode. Stick around to the end, okay? And we'll talk to you later. Any guess what this is? So you see, you can kind of tell it's 3D printed, and it's like
I was gonna say it looks like
ramen.
it's supposed to look like ramen with an egg in it, but it's not. But it's a sculpture, is what I would have thought. Yeah, like it looked like clay
Yeah.
from this far
Yeah,
away.
someone gave me this when I went to play Magic last time. All right, now look at this. It opens up,
You put your deck in there.
and you can put your deck in there. So sorry for our audio-only listeners. You won't really get the full enjoyment out of it.
That's
Now
cool.
this is compounded because about a month or so ago, I bought this deck box off of Amazon that I use, and this is the deck box.
Oh, okay. Is it like Chinese takeout? Is that what
Yeah,
it's? Okay.
it's
Trying to
Chinese
remember to say
takeout.
it. Nice.
See, it's got the "Thank you, enjoy" on top,
Nice.
and this comes off. And what is there? There's like a panda, and it goes on the bottom. It's one of those deck boxes. It's actually a pretty nice deck box for being like $12 on Amazon or whatever.
Oh, that's
Obviously,
cool.
it's like not branded or whatever, but yeah, I thought that was funny. So now I could go to F&M or whatever, and I got my
You're ready. You're ready to eat dinner.
That's funny. And the person who gave me this had no idea I had this other deck box too. So it's just I think they're just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Thought that was hilarious.
The other one seems a little cumbersome to carry around and put in the back.
A little bit. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. And it's not even like it fits like not that many cards, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe an EDH deck worth. Yeah, someone clearly 3D printed it if you look closely. The egg yolk and stuff.